But eventually I had to face the music, or in this case, the tomato. So dumb.
Welcome to Tiffy Tries, 1 month, 1 mission. Every month, I take on a new challenge, push my limits, and learn something new. Join me as we dive into the adventure together.
Welcome to Tiffy Tries, 1 month, 1 mission. I'm Tiffany, and this month I stumbled onto a little treasure from the past that set me on a 12-day journey full of lemon water, lettuce, and tomato juice. While cleaning out my grandfather's house, my mom found an old book that used to belong to her grandmother, Grandma Boots. She was a librarian at our local library and the second wife to my great-grandfather. The book is called Personality Unlimited, the Beauty Blue Book, and was published in 1943. It's in almost perfect condition, and inside it just tells you, it gives you advice on health, beauty, and charm. When I found it at my mother's house, I opened it up and saw a 12-day weight reduction menu. And I was like, I have to try this because I'm me. The plan starts every morning with the juice of 1 lemon and 6 ounces of water. Not my favorite part at all. Honestly, I dreaded it, but I stuck with it. And I have to admit, it did help with morning hunger. I'm not sure how or why, but after I drank the lemon water, I just wasn't as hungry as I usually would have been. For breakfast, the options alternated between 8 ounces of grapefruit juice, orange juice, and stewed prunes. Now, stewed prunes sounds disgusting, but it really wasn't as bad as all that. Alongside that, they suggested half a cup to a full cup of coffee depending on the day. Now, before this, I didn't even drink coffee, so I reached into the back of the cupboard and pulled out some leftover decaf beans from like a long time ago. And I crossed my fingers that I wouldn't fall back in love with coffee. I did decide to just drink the full cup of coffee in the mornings and not drink the suggested coffee later in the day, because the one time I followed the book and split the 1 cup of coffee into 2 halves, I didn't sleep well that night at all, and I decided that I was just going to have the full cup of coffee in the morning. Now, for the first 4 days, the plan included a mid-morning meal of either fruit or vegetable juice. I was absolutely afraid of the vegetable juice, as I remember having it when I was younger and finding it absolutely repulsive. So I avoided it as long as I could. But eventually I had to face the music, or in this case, the tomato. The book lists different veggie juices like celery or tomato or a mixed type, but I didn't want to keep buying different types of ingredients, so I got 1 bottle of tomato vegetable juice and just used that. To my surprise, it wasn't awful. In fact, when I followed the book's suggestion to warm it up, it was actually kind of like tomato soup. I did like it more than I thought I would, and I would drink it again in the future. Lunches were usually some kind of salad and not your typical lettuce and crouton type. I'm talking things like celery, apple, and walnuts added to it, or fresh grapes and pears on a bed of lettuce. Probably the weirdest one was just shredded cabbage and pineapple. Each said to use a light dressing, which later I realized just meant a little lemon juice or grapefruit juice. I did substitute some of the light dressing for a homemade buttermilk yogurt, and it wasn't good either. I tried to stay away from as many seasonings as possible, trying to mimic the 1943 rationing lack of anything. I followed the plan pretty much exactly as she said, and I didn't add any seasoning or salts, because she did say to not use salt if you could help it. And lunches especially were very bland. Meat was very rare at lunch, and I don't really eat meat anyways. The most memorable lunch was on day 6, where she suggested 2 pieces of thin toast, tomato, and bacon. And I did swap the bacon for a seitan bacon, even though it was a bit dry because we couldn't use like a dressing or a mayonnaise. I loved this meal the most because it was probably the most flavorful with the seitan bacon, and at that point I was really starting to miss bread. It was the first bread I had in like 6 days. It was so good. So dinners were the biggest meals of the day, which often included meat, which I worked around with potatoes, more seitan, or beans. These were filling enough, but the hardest part was not snacking in between. Eventually, I got smart and started saving the lunch dessert, a little fruit, for that awkward afternoon stretch between lunch and dinner. I even started delaying breakfast to space things out better. Those 2 small changes really helped me stick with the plan. Of course, life happens, and on day 4, there was a holiday, and I substituted all of breakfast for a small latte, which was delicious. I thought I was going to keep on track with dinner, but I ended up messing up dinner completely, and so I did repeat day 4. On day 8, I went on a field trip and ate the dinner that was provided, which was a peanut butter jelly sandwich, juice, and a cookie. And I didn't really feel bad about this because that night it was tuna on the menu, and again, I don't eat meat. And so I just basically substituted the tuna for PB&J. Day 11, I had some serious attitude problem and I was not having the menu. I ended up eating a salad and some leftover lasagna that I improvised from day 10's ingredients. So I did repeat day 11 too. Remember, this book was written during World War II. Rationing was a real thing. Ingredients were scarce and women had to make do with what they had. That helped me let go of perfectionism. I didn't run around trying to buy the 5 types of lettuce that she mentions in the book. I used the same lettuce for most of the meal plans. I also didn't go heavy on the seasonings, as we talked about earlier, because the book specifically says to stay away from salt, and because things were scarce, I didn't add seasonings. I just pretended that I didn't have them because they weren't available. The book even warns about drinking too much water, which is kind of crazy. I mostly followed that unless I was really thirsty, and surprisingly, it didn't seem to be a problem. I just followed the beverages that were provided in the menu, and most days I was fine. So here I am 14 days later. I've lost almost 5 pounds, which is amazing. I am planning on sticking to a similar eating pattern for the rest of the month to see how much more weight I lose. As I sit here and reflect on the last 14 days, I want to mention that I really did not like the lemon water.
This has already become my least favorite part. Hot lemon water.
But I will probably keep that going. The juice and coffee combo made me feel surprisingly energized. My mom did say it might spike my glucose, which may or may not be true. I don't have enough information on that. Feel free to leave comments on what exactly she's talking about. But for me, it worked and I didn't feel poopy. So I will continue with that, but definitely do your own research on what's best for you. Dinner is the trickiest part for me. I love big portions and I will often go back for like seconds. Come on guys, I'm chubby for a reason. One amazing moment that I had over the last 2 weeks is that my kid looked at me and she's like, "Mom, you do seem to be losing weight." This was one of my most interesting challenges yet. Just with the meal plans alone and doing some research on World War II on a domestic level, it's kind of made me think a lot about how it was growing up at that time period. My grandfather during World War II, when World War II ended, I think he was about 8 years old. His parents had to try to figure out how to feed him with what was provided. And for some reason that just, as a mother, makes me like tear up. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next month for a new mission. Until next time, take care of yourself, follow curiosity, and keep trying. For breakfast, Ruth Foster, or as my mother knew her, my mother, oh my God, yeah, let's not talk about that, but yes, it's indeed factual. All right.